next. We will look at what comes next when I take us to the slide that shows us where we are and what comes next. So I will show you that in just a second. Are there any questions about our agenda for today? No questions. Okay. That is good. So let me do this. I see why I didn't. Okay. Let's try that. Minimize. There you go. So that's our agenda for today. Okay. So where are we and what comes next? We are here. So we will do work chapter 11, part 1. I have a worksheet that I gave you. I am going to work from that worksheet. I don't have a traditional PowerPoint for today. Switch it up a little bit. So I'll walk you through part 1, and then on Thursday I'll walk you through part 2. At the end of class, a learning check for chapter 11 will open. It will close at midnight on the 8th. So it will open after class on Thursday and close midnight Friday. So you can choose to sit and take it whenever you wish. I think it's 90 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. 50 questions. So yeah, same format as the previous learning checks. Open book, use your textbook. That's why you have it, but it's individual work. Honor system counts, works. So enjoy working on that. If I need to do anything around that, just send me an email so that I don't forget. But otherwise, it's good to go, okay? For next Tuesday's class, you and your classmates will submit at the end of the day on Tuesday your project outline. If you go into my WP classes, I copied and pasted from your syllabus and pasted it in my WP classes. So when you open my WP classes, you will see what you should have seen already in your syllabus, the directions of what I'm looking for in this outline here. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions around that. I looked at your submission for the last class where you did your project work. So I gave you some feedback, and that will help you with this. All right. So you will operate from a location of your choosing. I have not canceled any of my classes in the last 2 years or so. I've needed to go online here and there, but I've never canceled. And so I'm hoping that will continue for a long time to come. If life happens, it's unfortunate, but that's my plan from conception, that you operate from a location of your choosing. You will connect with your group mates, same as last time. Only one person in the group needs to submit. If anyone does not participate in this round, I need to know in that submission that someone didn't participate. That's very important for me to know. Okay, that's on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, you and I will be at home or somewhere else doing, hopefully resting, catching up, watching bad TV, cooking, etc., etc. Okay, so enjoy your midterm break. I am not giving you any homework to come back with, but just come back the following Tuesday ready to do the last chapter in Berg, which is chapter 12. And then get ready to switch gears, because after this week, we'll be getting ready to start our new text. Seagull, Teenage Brainstorm is the name of our new text. It's like a novel, but it's written by the leading scientist on child and adolescent development, Dan Siegel. So even in the master's level human development classes, we study Dan Siegel. He remains today the leading scientist. So he has a different text we use for HD311. And when we are done with the Burke chapters in HD311, those of you who are in that class with me, we will switch over to a different Dan Siegel text, again like a novel, but coming out of his scientific research and work. So that's what that is what is coming next. I need to submit midterm grades on October 22nd, but you don't owe me any major assignments. The last major assignment that feeds into your midterm grade is this guy over here, the 50-point projects outline. So I know there's a class where I have a major assignment right here. I don't know what I was thinking, because then I have to grade it and then tabulate grades and give everything to the registrar for October 22nd. So the way I set up my WP classes, you should be able to see what our total is and what your total is. All of my courses are out of 1,000. So you can simply calculate and see what number, what percent you come up with. 90% is an A minus, 94% is an A, 70% is a C minus. Anything below 70% is a fail. So hopefully no one in this class is going to struggle or need to consider retaking or even dropping the class. I don't know if that deadline has come yet where you can still drop the class, but I'm hoping to keep everybody, and from what I remember, the class is going along just fine. So, okay, so this is where we are, where we're going. Any questions about that? Anything not clear at all? Send me an email. I will respond to you, okay? If anything comes up and you're unsure about anything. All right, so do you want to take a few minutes to connect with your members in your groups? A lot of you said you liked that and it was helpful for you. So why don't we take a few minutes before we do that? In terms of projects, where we at? You have knocked this out. This is what comes next, your project outlines. What comes next after the outline is a draft that is due on the 11th. And the presentations of the projects will be in December, in our last week together. So there's absolutely no reason why anyone should not get a good grade for this class. So I want to give you a few minutes to connect with your group members before we tackle our worksheet. So why don't you take 5 minutes? Is that too much? No? Okay. No objections? All right, take 5 minutes starting now. Oh, I found one PowerPoint presentation. Do you want to look at it and see what the previous group did for their final project? You want to see it? Sure. Okay. And then you take your 5 minutes out of what I have. They did this project in person, so you won't have their audio, but it's just a PowerPoint presentation. We talked about it, and I remember to a presentation. So you just read on your own, okay? Hold on, let me make sure this is sharing on my Zoom. Okay. What was the grade for this presentation? I don't remember. I think it was a B plus based on everything they did, if I remember correctly. I will continue to show you more, and I will remember to bring the grade and the feedback I gave. I think that would be helpful, right? So I'll do that next time around, okay? Be prepared to share your thoughts on the actual PowerPoint, things you liked, things you think they could have done differently in terms of just how it looks when someone looks at it like this. Okay? Take a minute and jot down any thoughts you have and share what your thoughts are about this PowerPoint. Okay, take a few more seconds, and then I'll bring you back and you can share what your thoughts are. Pros and cons. Okay, thoughts. Brady, I see your hand is up.
I would have to say, like, pros would be me, like, they do a good job, like, on the front, like, a lot of pictures, like, you know, just keeps your attention, but I think the cons would, like, it's a lot shorter than what I thought, because it's like, this is a huge presentation, I thought it was gonna be a lot, like, more in depth, and also, like, the references, when I saw the references, and there's, like, two things, only, like, two, sources cited, I think that's, it should obviously have like a lot more sources. You know, and this is a big project, you're putting a lot of information out, and I think you need more.
I think yours says 5 peer-reviewed sources in addition to Berg, right? So they didn't do a good job there. It's either that, this is an old one. It may have been before I then sat down and thought to myself, man, maybe I need to give more direction, which I tried to do last year and this year for sure. So it may have been before I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't even see birth there. Good. What else? Yes, ma'am.
I just thought it was kind of boring. Like, I know the pictures are there, but I feel like if I was looking at this and trying to learn, I would not be engaged, and I'd kind of end up spacing off.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that's fair because they stood and they gave us a very lively presentation. Yeah. So it was not boring. But I hear you as you look at the presentation, it may feel you felt bored. That's how you felt. That's okay. That's valid. Yes, sir? There you go. That's very, very important. So no theory whatsoever. Come on now. We want to see HD psych theories. Feel free to add others. I've seen others adding social theories here too. All the theories you are learning in your other classes show us that you understand theory. That's one of the ways that folks will know and appreciate that you have a college degree. You need to be able to cite peer-reviewed sources and applied theories. Okay? And in chapter 1, we spent mostly talking about just theories. Psychodynamic theories by Sigmund Freud. In this class, we are mostly interested in Erickson's psychosocial stages of development, the 8 stages of development, right? So you want to be able to apply those. Piaget, talking at what's going on in the mind. So here they talk about the mind, but no theory whatsoever to connect brain function and healthy adolescent development and the connection to nutrition. That piece is very, very missing right there. Okay. What else? I don't see any in-text citations. The in-text citations is, it can be creative, right? You don't want to flood your slide with citations. But I'll give you an example where you definitely need one. I'll show you. See, once you're giving us statistics like this, says who? So we want to see a citation here. If you have a lot going on and you use a bunch of citations, this, once you are throwing statistics at us, you want to see a citation. You can make it small, a tiny little citation right here. Doesn't have to be big, this size. Be creative. But once you are giving us this kind of data, you want to cite for sure, okay? I think they were kind of going at the mind-body connection here, but I don't remember what they said at it, but this would have been the wonderful place to talk at, hey, for a young person to maintain the healthy trajectory of cognitive development and reach stage 4 according to Piaget's stages of cognitive development, make sure you're eating a balanced diet, etc., right? Then you cite, you can cite Berg for the Piaget, or go somewhere where someone did a study. You know, the research is out there. Your job is to find it and to apply it. Anything else? Okay, not at this time. All right, I'll keep showing you more, and I will bring my full comments so that you can better appreciate. But if I am to grade just this PowerPoint, just the PowerPoint, what would you give it? I know what I'll give it. What would you give it? It's not a trick question. The what? The B minus? Other people?
I agree with that.
Okay. I would give it a C minus. Once you're missing this, you know, your citations are not even enough. You are lucky to get this. I will gladly do without your visual effects. You might get a decent score for sure, but never mess with this. These two things because anyone can whip up this and go on the internet, find all kinds of weird things there. Some of it is good, but not all of it is good. And folks won't have access to EBSCOhost or Google Scholar. You are upperclassmen, we expect you to show us good information here. And your text is really, really good. There's lots of really good information. So when we say give us citations, you don't even have to go far to find peer-reviewed sources, because your text is constantly citing research. Find a few that are talking about really, really important things or things that are relevant to you and see what the book cited. That's a great starting place, and just use that and find the article, read it, and give us a little more information to show that you can read journal articles and use them. All right, why don't you take those 5 minutes and connect with your partners if there are no other questions. Then I'll bring you back when the alarm goes off. Awesome. So please make it clear who's doing what, and make sure the work is equal. I will look hard for that when you guys do the presentation. Not one person must carry the burden of carrying the project. And the other thing I didn't quite like about this, the formatting is different. Can you see the format there is different to here? Clearly, these are two different people who did the pieces. I get that, and that's okay. But in graduate school, we took an entire class called Death by PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint. If you want to kill people with PowerPoint, you can do that. And so in graduate school, they expected our PowerPoint presentations to be really different from our undergraduate work. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not expecting that of you, but it's little things that for me become important. I listened to a presentation by a diplomat who came to talk to us at North Dakota State University about working for a State Department. This gentleman, he was an undersecretary to Clinton. Cannot remember his name. He came in, he spoke to everybody. He spoke for an hour, and his presentation only had pictures. It was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. Took an entire class on PowerPoint, but never had I seen someone speak so eloquently, so artistically, using only pictures. It was amazing, but foreign service, right? So his subject was a little easy in that way. But be super, super creative. This is not a presentation that's relevant to this class, but my students in the general psychology class will watch this video today as I talk to them about their presentations. I think it's good for you to watch the video too. Their project was to find something of interest in an assigned chapter and then give us a 5-minute presentation of what the issue is, so what, something to that effect, and then they had to do a video, a PowerPoint presentation with voiceover, but I said to them, I want a video, same as I am saying to you. This one was done very, very differently. So I want you to see this, even though it doesn't pertain to, it's not, the material is very different, but check it out. So those of you who are in my general psychology, you will watch this twice, but I think folks here can benefit from this too. Just some context, chapter 10 is about food.
It's Lindsay. This is me in quarantine, wearing my quarantine comfy outfit, baking, and I'm going to talk about the chapter that I was assigned for this project, which was chapter 10. And that chapter is about emotion and motivation. And within that chapter, it talks about hunger, which is why I'm here, baking, and making cinnamon rolls. So in this chapter also talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and theories that explain why hunger happens and how our body reacts to hunger. Wow. Did you know that when you feel hungry and your stomach is telling you that you feel hungry, it means that there are actual physical contractions going on inside of your stomach? The actual stomach contractions that we felt because of hunger were discovered by having a volunteer swallow a balloon. I felt so bad. Swallow a balloon, and when the balloon inflated, it made the person hungry, and the balloon would feel those hunger pains and transmit the signal back to the person studying, this volunteer, and that is how we found out that hunger pains and contractions are a real thing when we're hungry, which is cool. Bam. Another thing involved with hunger is hormones. Now, I used to think that hormones were only involved in like puberty, but that is wrong because they are tiny chemical messengers that are involved in basically everything we do, including hunger, which is what I'm feeling right now, so I can use cinnamon rolls. There are 3 hormones that are involved in hunger. That is ghrelin, insulin, and orexin. I'm assuming insulin is the only one you've heard of. That is the only one that I've heard of. Ghrelin is secreted by your empty stomach, which lets your stomach or lets your body know that you're hungry. Let's do a taste test. You try it first. Tell me if you like it.
Really good.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Insulin is involved in the decrease of appetite. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas. Orexin is also hunger stimulating, but it is secreted by the hypothalamus. So. Obviously, cravings are also involved with hunger. Obviously right now I am craving something sweet, which is something that I usually always crave, something sweet. But somebody across the world, like in Asia, might be craving something salty rather than sweet. So our taste buds can vary based on cultures and areas of the world that we're in. I've come outside and talking about my finished cinnamon rolls and more about chapter 10 and hunger. In chapter 10, another thing that's talked about is how cravings influence what we're eating. It influenced me to make these cinnamon rolls. For example, psychologists talk about the ecology of eating, which is basically how different situations can affect how much we eat, where we eat, and why we eat. There are a few situational influences that our book talks about in chapter 10. That is friends and food. Serving size is significant, selections stimulate, and nudging nutrition. An example of some of these is friends and foods. Let's say you're going out to eat with some friends. Usually, because you're out with friends, because you're having a good time, you would tend to eat more food in those situations. In the nudging nutrition example, one way that this is shown is if bacteria without carrots or the nuts, for example, take more into carrots than the where technology is being.
Audio, we do videos. You have to pay for YouTube, right?
So,
It's
and
so I know this project great. She was talking at stuff that was in chapter 10, but one of my feedback points to this student was I wish you had made an even more salient and more a louder connection to chapter 10. And I also said I wish you had also incorporated other information other than just chapter 10. So those were some of my comments to this student. Anyway, this one is for my other class, not this class, but I thought you would benefit from seeing what going outside of the box can look like. So hopefully this was also helpful and nudges you to be creative, be as creative as you like, okay? But PowerPoint converted into a video is still great, okay? All right, let's go into any questions, comments before we go into our worksheet. Okay. Number one, so we're looking at the physical and cognitive development in adolescence in chapter 11. And let's see how far we will get with this worksheet. So you will need to write or type whatever it is you're doing. Number one, adolescence begins with puberty. Maybe I should put this up, huh? Okay, let me do that. Begins with puberty. Number two, in Freud's psychosexual theory. Pardon? Oh, okay. I'm going to put it up. So if you forgot to download the worksheet, you will definitely benefit from this. Okay. So adolescence begins with puberty, a flood of biological events leading to an adult-sized body and sexual maturity. So that's what leads to a lot of the growth that we see in adolescence. Number two, in Freud's psychosexual theory, sexual impulses reawaken the genital stage, triggering psychological conflict and volatile behavior. So in the text by Dan Siegel that we will read later, we will process, in fact, in chapter 12, our last chapter, we will begin to unpack why young people sometimes act and react impulsively. And the psychosexual theory helps to understand that. And so that genital stage that Freud talked about, that happens earlier on, we see it reawakened. It goes to sleep in the industry phase, according to Erik Erikson. As children begin to spend more time in school, when they go into school and navigate that new space, learn how to work with the teacher, make friends, etc. And so the genital stage goes dormant, but at puberty, that genital stage is reawakened. Number 3, the rate of serious psychological disturbance rises only slightly from childhood to adolescence. Number 4, biological, psychological, and social forces combine to influence adolescent development. What we mean by that is that what is happening in the teen's body, what's happening in the mind, all those hormones, and how they're impacting brain development. And then the social forces, we're talking about the community influence, media influence. Right now, there's a big frenzy about what's happening with Facebook. Those of you who are following the news, someone who worked at Facebook was keeping tabs and secretly collecting data about how Facebook is negatively impacting teens' psychological well-being, and how Facebook knew that, but they didn't do anything to prevent it from happening. All of those are social forces that we are talking about in number 4. So it's an interplay of those 3 important factors that are impacting our developing and growing teen. In China, you know, the government has now clamped in and they're taking serious measures to minimize and control what is happening with teens. So in China, they've put a law that only permits young people to play video games for 1 hour on weekends, right? Yeah. They've banned the TikTok phenomenon of following your favorite stars. What is that called on TikTok?
I think that's pretty
Yeah,
good.
that thing, Chinese government has banned that. They've done something else. I forgot, but if you look it up in the news, it's pretty interesting what they've done to curtail these social forces as they try and control what is happening with their youth. They want them to be more industrious, and that is their plan for whipping youth into line. We'll see how that works out. How do they enforce it? How do they check? What happens if you play more than 2 hours of video games on the weekend between 8 and 9 p.m.? I don't know. Let's watch that space and see how that unfolds. Number 5, in industrialized nations, adolescence is greatly extended, and researchers divide it into 3 phases. Early adolescence, which is 11 to about 14 years. Middle adolescence, which is 14 to 16. Many of you could be in late adolescence, young adulthood, right? Late adolescence is 16 to 18. No, most of you should be young adults. Enjoy it while it lasts. My daughter keeps saying to me, Dad, I want to be a teenager. I want a car. I want coffee. And I want cash. Yeah. And grass is always greener elsewhere, you see. Grass is always greener elsewhere. And so they're doing this joke, she and her brother. She says to me, hey, as a professor, what do you do? So I said to her, I do a lot of typity stuff, you know, and I work with wonderful students. So the joke is a monkey can do that job, and then they giggle. And I'm like, no, a monkey can't do my job. And they say, yeah, a monkey can do your job, Dad. And they just laugh. So I should videotape some of these things. Monkey can do my job. Seriously? Okay. Any this part of 1 section over here around physical development and stuff that's going on in there? No? All right, let's go to part number 2. Oh, come on. Right. In part number 2, we're looking at puberty, the physical transition to adulthood. And I love the worksheet because I give you the page number so you can go back and look at it in that way. Number 1, genetically influenced hormonal processes regulate pubertal growth. So what we mean by that is there are a lot of hormones that are regulating this growth. In my HD311 class, we're talking a lot about how girls advance in height more than boys. But that changes when puberty hits, and then boys then grow taller than girls in many instances. And it's hormones that drive that process and those differences in pubertal growth. Number 2, girls reach puberty on average 2 years earlier than boys. So girls mature faster than boys. Number 3, in middle childhood, secretions of growth hormones and thyroxine increase, leading to a tremendous gain in body size and to the attainment of skeletal maturity. Skeletal maturity is how the bones are growing, their strength. And so growth hormones and thyroxine increase. That's why we see them eating the house down. And that's why appetite goes up, because hormones are working real hard. Hormones have kicked in, and we see a lot of physical growth taking place. Number 4, sexual maturation is controlled by the sex hormones, estrogens and androgens. Remember we said in number 2, in part 1, that sexual impulses reawaken in the genital stage, triggering psychological conflict and volatile behavior. So now the reason is because of these sex hormones. Number 5, between ages 6 and 8, increasing levels of adrenal androgens influence girls' height spurt and stimulate growth of underarm and pubic hair in girls. Number 6, boys' maturing testes release large quantities of testosterone, which leads to muscle growth, body and facial hair, and other male sex characteristics. Number 7, during the growth spurt, adolescents add 10 to 11 inches in height and 50 to 75 pounds. Growth is complete for most girls by age 16 and for boys by age 17 and a half. Number 8, you don't put anything in there, but during puberty, large sex differences in body proportions appear. So it begins to be fairly evident in number 8, male and female characteristics. Somewhere I heard hips don't lie. Is that true? In many cases it is, right? There were friends of ours, they are twins, identical twins, very similar, you can miss them. But how I could tell the difference between these two wonderful brothers was one had a little more hips, he was a little more hipsy, good looking, tall gentlemen, both of them are pharmacists, and one is a little more hipsy than the other. So that's how I could tell the difference. Hips don't lie, friends. Number 9, girls' gains in gross motor performance are slow and gradual, leveling off by age 14. Boys show a dramatic spurt in strength, speed, and endurance that continues throughout the teenage years. I'll jump 10 and 11 for the sake of time. Are you able to see? Isaiah, can you see clearly from the back? You can see? Marisa, you good? Myra, you can see clearly? Didi? Okay. You guys? Okay. So you're good?
I got 4 eyes, I'm fine.
You're fine? Okay. Sid, how are you? Okay. Number 12. In a study of US youths from 9 to 17, only a minority of participants engaged in regular exercise outside of school hours. In high school, only 55% of US boys and 48% of girls received any physical education. So basically what this point is saying on number 12 is very few do any physical exercise and activity outside of PE in school. That's a problem. I don't know if it comes later where I talk about how maybe it's in both classes, my HD311, and later on in this class, I will talk about how child and youth obesity is a national security problem in the US. On NPR not too long ago, they were interviewing a military general who was saying that if the US needed to go to war today, we would have a major problem because many of the folks, many of the young people who would be expected to respond to the draft will either be too big, too fat, is what he said, to perform at optimum. And he said that's a national security risk for us right now. That's a big problem. Any questions at this time? So when you pick your problem for your project, you are looking at some of these things and saying, what's the problem? And the book does a really good job of talking at some of these solutions. You will need to look outside of just the text and the research it cites to find more information about what can be done differently to ensure that we are addressing and or mitigating these challenges that affect and impact young people in not only in the US, but all over the world, right? Let's go to number 14. In adolescence, changes occur in both primary sexual characteristics and secondary sexual characteristics. I don't know if you remember the difference between primary and secondary sexual characteristics. Who remembers? Just go for it.
So is the primary like your reproductive parts of your like core function, and then secondary would be like the growth pretty like body hair, breath,
Right.
curves, all that stuff.
Yes, you are correct. So primary is anything that is concerned and related to reproduction. And then secondary is not related to reproduction. So facial hair, broadening of the shoulders, etc. None of that is responsible for or connected to reproduction in that way, right? Number 15, female puberty usually begins with the budding of the breasts and the growth spurt.
You might slow it down.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm on number 15. Menarche typically occurs around 12 and a half for North American girls and 13 for Western Europeans. Menarche is the scientific term for period or menstruation. I find it fascinating. Well, I lie. I find it highly irritating when I read this word in people's essays. If I say I want a scientific essay and someone writes this, y'all shouldn't write like that. That's not scientific. Okay. So same thing with the period. You don't call it that in a scientific, technical writing. You call it menarche. Number 16, nature delays sexual maturity until the girl's body is large enough for childbearing. Number 18. The growth spurt in boys peaks at about age 14, and spermachy, or the first ejaculation, usually occurs around age 13 and a half. Number 19. Heredity, nutrition, and exercise all contribute to the timing of pubertal changes. Number 20. In females, a sharp rise in body weight and fat may hasten sexual maturation released through leptin, which is believed to signal to the brain that the girl's energy stores are sufficient for puberty. I won't read 21 or 22. Take down the notes. Let me know when you're done, Teresa.
Can you show me the
Everyone else, how are you doing? Can I go to the next section after this? Give you a few minutes to write down those notes. I have one or two things I want to say about this section before we move on to the third section. Let me know when you're done, Marissa.
Okay.
Those of you who are ahead, just keep going. So really, an important point here is the fact that for a long time they thought milk was the reason why menarche was coming earlier and earlier. Long time ago, the onset of menarche would be seen around about age 16, 17 in many cases, but now we are seeing it as early as 12 and a half, in some cases as early as 9. So for a long time, they thought it was milk, hormones given to cows, and that coming through milk. And they said after extensive research, they discovered that it was nothing to do with milk. Then they started investigating meat, and they couldn't discover that meat had nothing to do with earlier onset of menarche in that way. So they've discovered that it is actually body mass index, fat in the body. The more you have, the quicker young girls are likely to have an earlier onset of menarche, the higher their BMI. Make sense? So the rest of this section is talking at the impact of puberty on adolescent development. The impact of early onset and late onset of menarche and spermarchy. Part 4 is talking at health issues, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders. Is that okay? That last section is talking about sex and adolescence, lack of open communication with parents about sex has led to contradictory messages. These are some of the reasons why we see unintended pregnancies, early onset of sex to even begin with, engagement in risky sexual behavior. And I move on to the last section that I want you to get information on. Tell me where you are so I know how to scroll. Okay. All right, I see mostly thumbs up, so should I wait for anybody? No? Okay. So talking about LGBTQ youth, STI prevalence rates. Abortion. I think it's in this class where we talked about how the US has the highest rate of teen abortion in the developed world. That's largely as a result of lack of access to sexual and reproductive health services. And the lack of health insurance. My plan was to end here today, then we'll pick it up with cognitive development in the next class. So some important stats on teen alcohol and drug use, marijuana use. Obviously this has changed. This book is working off of census data from 2010, research up to about 2016. So the new textbook is going to be capturing 2020 data and researchers who are tabulating all that information. So these numbers will change. Drugs clearly have a lasting consequence, impairing neurons in their connective networks. I want to end here today. Please remember to do the reflection questions. It's 2:43. You can use the remaining 2 minutes to do that, or you have until midnight to complete the reflection questions. Thanks for being here. I hope all the project work was helpful to you. And hang in there. Midterms are close. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.